All right, so you're getting ready for a specialized veterinarian interview, which is a big deal. It takes a ton of dedication to get to this point in your career. And yeah, okay, we all love animals, but this deep dive is about acing that interview and proving you're the absolute expert in your specialized field. We're really digging into the complete career interview guide and the complete career guide today to give you an edge.
You know, what I find really interesting about these resources is how they emphasize that specialized veterinary medicine is a step beyond general practice. It's about combining a deep love for animals with serious scientific knowledge and a commitment to ethical care, all within your own niche.
So it's like becoming, say, the Sherlock Holmes of feline cardiology
Yeah.
or the Jane Goodall of exotic avian care.
Exactly. And that passion for your particular needs, that's something interviewers are going to be looking for right away. And that brings us to a question that often comes up pretty early in these interviews. What inspired you to become a specialized veterinarian?
Okay, so I'm guessing this is not the time to launch into a generic "I love animals" speech, even if it's true. What's the strategy here?
Think of it as your chance to tell a story, but a story that reveals your why. Maybe there was this childhood encounter with a particular animal that sparked your interest. Or maybe a case during your studies really solidified your desire to specialize.
So if you spent your summers as a kid rescuing injured pigeons, that's your origin story.
Mm,
And RoleCatcher actually helps people pinpoint those defining moments in their career timeline, right?
absolutely. It helps connect the dots for the interviewer and showcase your genuine passion for your chosen field.
So it's like saying, this isn't just a job, it's my calling. Yeah. Okay, so another common question in these interviews is, how do you stay updated on the latest advancements in your field?
This one is all about showing your commitment to lifelong learning. This field is constantly changing, with new research techniques and technology always emerging.
So attending those conferences and reading those massive journals isn't just for show, it's actually crucial.
Exactly. And mentioning specific conferences, journals, or continuing education courses you've taken really shows you're actively engaged in professional development.
And get this, RoleCatcher can actually suggest relevant courses or conferences based on the specific job description. It's like personalized prep.
It really is, like having a personal assistant for career advancement. But it's not just about what you know, it's about how you apply it. Which leads us to another question interviewers love. Can you describe a particularly challenging case you've worked on and how you handled it?
Okay, this one sounds like a test. What are they really looking for here?
They want to see your problem-solving skills in action. Choose a case that really highlights your expertise within your specialization and walk them through your thought process, how you approached the problem.
So it's like you're telling a detective story, but instead of a crime, you're solving a medical mystery.
Exactly. What were the symptoms you saw at first? What tools did you use to diagnose? How did you even arrive at a diagnosis? And then what was the treatment plan you implemented?
And I bet if you had to get creative or think outside the box, that's something to highlight.
Absolutely. It showcases your ability to handle complex situations and that you're dedicated to finding the best possible outcome for your patients.
And speaking of patients, a question that often comes up is, how do you manage those difficult or emotional situations with pet owners?
Ah, yes, because veterinary medicine isn't just about animals, it's about people, too.
It's about being both a skilled veterinarian and a compassionate communicator.
hmm
What's the key to doing well with this question?
I'd say honesty and empathy. Share your approach to communicating clearly and compassionately, especially when you have to deliver difficult news. Do you practice active listening, or are you really trying to understand the owner's perspective?
So it's about building trust and rapport, even in those really tough moments.
Exactly. And if you have specific experiences working with grieving clients or navigating difficult conversations, you can mention how you handled those situations with sensitivity and professionalism. It really is a delicate balance, and sometimes that balance means having to make tough calls. Which actually reminds me of another qualm that comes up a lot in specialized veterinary interviews. Can you describe a time when you had to make a difficult decision about a patient's care?
Wow, yeah. That feels like it brings together all the skills we've been talking about, your expertise, communication, empathy, and that gut feeling that vets rely on so much.
Right. It's about showing off how you make ethical decisions, especially in those sticky situations that are super complex or emotional.
So what kind of scenario would really demonstrate those skills well?
Think about a time when you had to weigh different opinions, maybe from your colleagues or even the pet owner. Or a situation where you didn't have all the information, but you still had to make a judgment call. It could be something like deciding to go ahead with a risky surgery, recommending euthanasia, or even just choosing between two treatment options, knowing they might have very different outcomes.
And it's not just about saying what you decided,
Right.
it's about explaining how you got there.
Exactly. Did you talk to other experts, do some research? Were there ethical things you had to consider? Bring those details in to explain your decision.
It's like showing them that you don't make these decisions lightly, that you're thoughtful, you have a system, and you're always trying to do what's best for the animal, even when things are uncertain.
You got it. And even if it was a tough situation emotionally, or even if the outcome wasn't what everyone hoped for, try to end by talking about how you grew or what you learned.
So it's about showing that you've learned from those experiences and become a better vet because of them.
Exactly. Now let's switch gears for a sec and talk about a different kind of challenge you might face. Talking about salary expectations.
Oh yes, the dreaded salary question. It can feel like you're walking on eggshells, but it's a super important part of the interview process.
Totally. And remember, this is a two-way street. They're trying to find the right person for the job, and you deserve to be paid fairly for your expertise.
Okay, that's a good point. So how do you suggest bringing this up? Should you wait for them to mention it, or should you be more upfront?
It's usually best if they start talking about salary first. That way you can get a sense of their budget before you put your own expectations out there.
That makes sense. But what if they just come right out and ask what you're looking for?
Don't worry, it's perfectly okay to politely deflect at first. You could say something like, I'm really excited about this opportunity and I'd love to learn more about the whole compensation package. Could you tell me a bit about the benefits and perks that come with this position?
Okay, that's a really smooth way to get more information before showing your cards.
Exactly. And while they're busy explaining the benefits and all that, you can start figuring out what you want to ask for based on your research, experience, and what other similar jobs in the area are paying.
That's where those salary insights from RoleCatcher can be so helpful. It looks at tons of data and gives you a realistic salary range for your job title and location. It's like having an extra bargaining chip.
Exactly. It's all about knowing your worth. And when it's finally time to talk numbers, be confident, but also be realistic. Give them a range instead of one fixed number, and make it clear that you're open to negotiation depending on the entire package.
So it's about finding that middle ground where everyone feels good about it.
You got it. And remember, even if you talk about salary early on, you can always circle back to it later after you've had more time to think about the role and what it involves.
Keep those lines of communication open. I like it.
Absolutely. And throughout this whole thing, from applying to that final handshake, stay professional, send a thank you note after your interview and mention how excited you are about the job and any parts of the conversation that really stuck with you.
It's a small thing, but it can make you stand out.
Totally. It shows you're really interested and serious about the opportunity. And if you don't hear back in a reasonable amount of time, it's perfectly fine to politely follow up to remind them you're still interested.
Persistence and professionalism, got it.
You got it. We've covered a lot in this deep dive. We talked about how to handle those common interview questions, how to navigate the salary conversation, and even some of those ethical situations that come with being a specialized vet. It really is. And sometimes it's not just about those everyday decisions. Sometimes you have to make tough calls. And that actually makes me think of another question that comes up in these specialized veterinarian interviews. Can you tell me about a time you had to make a really difficult decision about a patient's care?
That feels like it really brings together everything we've been talking about. Your expertise, communication skills, empathy, and that gut instinct that's so important in veterinary medicine.
Right. It's all about showcasing your ethical decision-making process, especially when you're dealing with a really complicated or emotionally charged situation.
So what kind of scenario would be good to talk about to show those skills?
Well, you could think about a time when you had to consider different opinions, maybe from other vets you work with, or even the pet owner themselves. Or a time when you had to make a judgment call, but you didn't have all the information you wanted. It could be something like having to decide whether or not to do a risky surgery, recommending euthanasia, or even just choosing between two treatment options when you know they might lead to very different outcomes.
And it's not enough to just tell them what you decided, right? You have to really walk them through how you arrived at that decision.
Exactly. Talk about who you consulted with, the research you did, any ethical factors that played a role. All of that helps them understand your decision.
It's about showing that you don't make these decisions lightly. You're methodical, you have a process, and you're always striving for the best outcome for your patients, even when there are a lot of unknowns.
You got it. And even if the situation was really tough emotionally, or if the outcome wasn't what everyone hoped for, Try to end your answer on a note of growth or learning.
So even in those difficult moments, it's about showing that you learned and grew as a veterinarian.
Exactly. Now, let's shift gears a little bit and talk about a different kind of challenge, navigating salary expectations during an interview.
Ah, yes. The dreaded salary question. It can feel a little awkward, but it's a super important part of the process.
It really is. And it's important to remember that it's a two-way street. They want to find the right person for the job, and you deserve to be compensated fairly for the expertise you bring to the table.
That's a great point. So how do you recommend approaching the topic? Do you wait for them to bring it up, or is it better to be proactive?
It's usually best to let them bring up salary first. That gives you a chance to get a sense of their budget before you put your own expectations out there.
Makes sense. But what if they just come right out and ask you what you're looking for?
Don't panic. It's perfectly fine to deflect politely at first. You could say something like, "I'm very interested in this opportunity, and I'd love to hear more about the entire compensation package. Could you tell me a bit more about the benefits and perks that come with this position?"
Okay, so that's a really smooth way to gather more information before you reveal your hand.
Exactly. And while they're explaining the benefits package, you can start to firm up your own salary expectations based on the research you've done, your experience level, and what other similar jobs in your area are paying.
And that's where those salary insights from RoleCatcher can be incredibly useful. By looking at tons of data, it can give you a realistic salary range for your job title and location, which gives you a bit of an advantage in these discussions.
Absolutely. Knowing your worth is key. And when you do get around to sharing your salary expectations, be confident but realistic. Give them a range rather than a specific number, and emphasize that your desired salary is negotiable depending on the overall compensation package.
So it's all about finding that sweet spot where everyone feels good about the agreement.
Exactly. And remember, even if salary comes up early in the conversation, you can always revisit it later once you have a better understanding of the role and everything it entails.
So keep those lines of communication open.
Absolutely. And throughout the whole interview process, from the moment you apply to that final handshake, remember to be professional. Send a thank you note after your interview expressing your enthusiasm for the position and highlighting any points from the conversation that resonated with you.
It's a small gesture, but it can really make a difference.
It really can. It shows you're truly interested in the opportunity.
Yeah.
And if you don't hear back from them within a reasonable time frame, it's perfectly fine to follow up politely and reiterate your interest.
So persistence and professionalism are key.
Absolutely. We've covered a ton of ground in this deep dive: common interview questions, salary expectations, and even those challenging ethical dilemmas that come with the territory as a specialized vet.
It's been quite the journey. Remember, while preparing for your interview is crucial, don't forget to relax and let your passion shine through. Interviewers want to see the real you, the dedicated, compassionate veterinarian you've worked so hard to become.
And don't forget, RoleCatcher is there to support you every step of the way, from crafting that perfect resume to practicing your interview answers with AI-powered feedback.
It's like having a career coach right in your pocket. Now go out there, be yourself, showcase your expertise, and land that dream job. We're rooting for you. And be sure to join us next time as we take another deep dive into a new career path.